you've been in politics, especially state and local politics, for a very long time. And I know you probably have some thoughts on the passing of John Burton, who died over the weekend at the age of 92. I was talking before you came on about his legacy and how many Democrats he kind of brought up in the political system, and how his influence will probably last for a very long time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll hit on three things real quick about Burton, okay? He was, first off, it's important to note that he was brothers with Phil Burton, member of Congress. Why is that significant? Because Phil Burton was brought in by Willie Brown whenever they had to be a redistricting. And now I'm talking about this because this is all the rage in terms of topics, of course. But Phil Burton was seen as the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, drawing districts that would favor Democrats in California. He regularly was brought in to make that happen. And of course, he passed away some time ago, but that's his legacy. Now, as far as John goes, John is credited with several things. One is, there we go. He was contemporaries with the, legendary Willie Brown. They actually entered the assembly in California on the exact same year in 1964, if you can believe that, Kim. That a long time ago. All right. And
so
they,
before I was born, for sure.
And so that gives you an idea of his longevity. And he came up with Willie Brown and really put together, for lack of a better terms, the San Francisco Democratic machine, which eventually, of course, is translated into state power when Willie became speaker himself. John Burton served as speaker. He then subsequently, when he was termed out in the California legislature, served as the California Democratic Party's chair. So here's this kind of three sort of, you could say, memorable, legendary leave behinds for California. One was starting the careers of people like Willie Brown, helping aid him, and then notably Nancy Pelosi. After John Burton stepped aside, then Nancy Pelosi eventually took the congressional seat in San Francisco that launched her into not just state, but of course, national prominence. That's number one. Secondly, in the state capitol, and I'm not joking about this, people typically avoided John Burton. And why? Because he had quite a temper. He had quite a colorful vocabulary. Let's just put it that way. And if people crossed him, he had no bones, even in public, about dressing them down with plenty of explicatives, and people were well aware of that. And lastly, he really built the Democratic Party in California into a powerhouse. Just one example of that, when he came on as chair, the Republicans and Democrats in California are raising about equal amounts in terms of, their funding for activities as a party. When he left that as Burton, he had doubled that amount relative to Republicans. So he is seen as quite an icon in Democratic circles in California.
Yeah, and I mean, Governor Gavin Newsom has some connections to him as well, right?
Right. Yeah, he did. He does. Willie Brown and Burton kind of mentored him along. Brown gave him his first appointment on some little commission in San Francisco. But it's fair to say that those two, and then eventually Nancy Pelosi, were Newsom's mentors, not to mention Kamala Harris's in San Francisco politics.
That's right. I wanted to talk to you about the U.S. Treasury Secretary over the weekend, and this is the second cut. I have some video for Gary. Tony, if you can play it, the second cut of Scott Bessent, who appeared on NBC's Meet the Press over the weekend and told Kristen Welker that he does not believe that that Trump's tariffs are a tax on Americans, or that Americans will be footing the bill for all of this. He also had some other interesting things to say, but let's start with that. Oh, Tony's still working for it. He dismisses concerns about the president's tariffs, and he says this is all working. They're looking at the current numbers about manufacturing jobs and the jobs that the poor jobs report that came out. And he's trying to spin it all these different ways that, we're going to see manufacturing increase in the United States, and the jobs that are being created are jobs that are not jobs that immigrants will fill. They're jobs that citizens will fill. It's another one of these moments, Gary, where you look at what the numbers say, and then you look at their spin on the numbers and it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, here's the deal. You have really two lines of thought, as you know, Kim, about this whole tariff thing slash jobs slash, let's just call it investment in the U.S. All right, and of course, one is, you know, the common refrain, and you're kind of echoing that, of look, this is a tax, and many economists will say it's a tax on the consumer, i.e., the American people, and it's eventually going to drive up inflation. It's going to drive down consumer spending, and it could potentially, in their view, have a negative impact on job creation in the US if you have a slowdown, especially in consumer spending, which is the single largest driver of GDP. So that's one school of thought. The other one is, well, listen, with this tariff thing, we're forcing other nations and companies to reinvest in the United States in, as Bessent says, the manufacturing sector in particular. What they caution, and what Bessent was trying to do over the weekend, was say, look, that doesn't happen overnight, right? He's saying we expect by next year to start seeing some of these factories come online, more jobs be created. And really, it's a focus, Kim, on, you know, manufacturing jobs, of course, the traditional blue collar Midwest specialty jobs, as opposed to service sector or hospitality industry jobs, which traditionally, as you know, haven't been unionized or to a much smaller degree and have not paid the kind of wages that manufacturing jobs. Now, which of these storylines is going to win out? We're going to know. I mean, in the next 12 to 24 to 36 months, it's going to be really clear where this ends up.
I think Tony has the video. Let's watch.
I think that was actually held back. The One Big Beautiful Bill, which has full expensing for factories and equipment, was passed on July 4th. Many companies were holding back then. So we are going to see construction jobs and we're going to see manufacturing jobs.
But Mr. Secretary, you know, the economy did add nearly 500,000 manufacturing jobs under former President Biden. In this case, since April, again, you're actually losing manufacturing jobs. Is that problematic for your policy?
Well, a couple of things, Chris. We're going to get the revisions for last year next week, and there may be as big as an 800,000 job downward revision. Again, this would be the second downward revision, so I'm not sure what these people who collect the data have been doing. It's good. We need good data. Secondly, what we are seeing is the jobs that are being created are going to either native-born or legal Americans. Most of the jobs created under the Biden administration, they went to illegal aliens.
Well,
yeah, thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. So that's a little bit of what Bessent had to say. And once again, blaming bad numbers, blaming bad data. And I don't know how much water that holds.
Well, I'll tell you, this data problem is becoming a real problem, Kim. I mean, it doesn't matter what your perspective is. It's like anything, right? You're watching a football game. I mean, either the ball is put on the 15-yard line or the 25-yard line, and it can't be both, right? But if you don't have agreement on that, how can either team call a play, right? And I mean, that may be a crude analogy, but that's really the problem right now, is that there's been so much disparity in people's perspectives on that. And as you know, I think one of the things that's most frustrating and angering for Americans is these constant quote unquote revisions of the numbers, up, down, sideways. This has got to get figured out, because right now you don't have any commonly agreed upon set of data that economists, politicians, CEOs, others feel like they can count on to make decisions, let alone Wall Street and investors.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move to redistricting, since I only have you for a few more minutes. We know that California is going to be putting on the next ballot the issue of whether or not the voters want to redistrict to go head to head with Texas's redistricting. But now there's a lot of talk about Utah, that they could be the surprise redistricting state. I thought Utah was a red state, but apparently, and they're doing it not to fight back against any type of perceived injustice, but they're redrawing congressional lines because a judge ruled last month that Utah legislators went around safeguards against partisan gerrymandering with their latest lines. And so that led to the Republican control of the 4 congressional seats in Utah. And now the judge says, no, you got to redraw these lines before the midterm elections, which the thinking is could lead to a Democratic seat coming out of Utah.
It might. I mean, and you have the storyline exactly right. So I won't repeat that or go into any more detail about it for today's purposes. But in terms of redistricting, there are 4 congressional seats in Utah. They are currently now all controlled by Republicans. There's thought that if the lines are redrawn and, for example, Salt Lake City is kept more intact, that's the one, as they call it, blue dot in Utah, where there's more Democratic voters. So, and I want to emphasize could, and I think you did too, Kim, Democrats could pick up a seat, but even Democrats in Utah are saying, look, it might at best end up a competitive seat, and maybe we have a shot at it. By the way, similar is happening in Ohio, where the Ohio legislature is being required to redraw their lines as well. And so we'll see what happens there. There, however, Republicans are looking to pick up as many as 1 or even 2 seats. And if you want to run down the other list real fast, you've got Indiana looking potentially, but not with confidence, at redrawing their districts to get 1 more Republican one. In Missouri, it's maybe 1 more seat. And the big one sitting out there now on the Republican side is Florida. Governor DeSantis has said they're probably going to do it, but it's interesting. There's not been a lot of real movement on that practically yet, but there's thoughts that maybe they could pick up 2 or 3 there. Problem for Democrats in places like Illinois, New York, and Maryland is that they've got some constraints and, frankly, many fewer Democratic seats. Republican seats to work with to pick up. So we'll see where this all ends up in the next 60 days or so. And of course, the big kahuna right here in California, where in less than 2 months, that Proposition 50 will be decided on to see if Californians get to vote on new district lines, of course, pushed by Governor Newsom.
It's so up in the air with all of these different states and the politics at play in all of these different states, and who's going to redistrict and who isn't going to, and what it could all mean. It's you have no idea what's going to happen in the midterms.
Well, that's absolutely right. So it tells you with any certainty that they know what's going to happen as a result of all this in next year's midterms, as I like to say, has absolutely no idea what they're talking about, because we don't even know what the district lines are going to be like in up to 10 or 12 states. So this is going to make, Kim, of course, right here in California, potentially $250 million being spent by both sides. People are already seeing all the ads on TV, getting all the in their mailbox, but this is going to happen in other states. We won't know, Kim, really and honestly, till probably early next year, what the final lines are going to look like for 435 congressional seats in the United States.
Wow. Speaking of the midterm elections, though, is that the current lines? Is that the proposed lines? Not sure what he's got on there. Interesting. I saw this story about Trump's job ratings, that they're still negative, that Americans are expressing support for vaccines, and that may have something to do with the negativity around RFK Jr. and vaccines and what's happening in Florida. Trump's overall approval sits at 43%. 78% of the respondents at NBC News said they support the use of vaccines. Also, inflation and the cost of living were economic concerns as well. Is it something that Trump has to worry about, this job rating, or if they manage to reconfigure the selection that people have of Congress people, they won't have to worry about job ratings? Is that why they're going so hard on this redistricting, because people are unhappy?
Well, you want to increase your margins any way you can going into midterms, which are historically, of course, it doesn't matter who's the party in power in the White House. As you know, Kim, historically, in the midterms, you lose seats and oftentimes lose control of the House or the Senate. Now, most experts believe, and I'm in this camp, that getting Democrats' chances of getting control of the Senate are going to be really tough next year. They don't have many seats to contend. And so that's going to be a tall order. So that's why you hear so much focus on the House. Now, listen, these underwater approval ratings, and when we say underwater, that always means any number below 50%. These are a real concern. And they are for any president going into midterms. look, here's the deal. You've only had, I was looking at these numbers over the weekend, Kim, in the last 25 years, the last quarter century, you've only had 2 midterms where the presidents avoided losing seats. Okay. And that was a Bush term, George Bush Jr., and an Obama term where they had positive approval ratings, notably George Bush after 9/11. Okay. And so history is not favorable towards presidents, period, in the midterm election. Certainly not if you've got approval ratings under 50%. So there's a long ways to go between now and the fall of next year. As you know, I love to say, look, that's a millennium in politics. Okay. It's only 13 to 14 months to the midterm election date, but that's a long, long time. So many things could happen internationally, domestically, that could really bounce those approval numbers up or down. And it's gonna be a battle royal next year, Kim, no doubt about it. But Trump right now and his people certainly have to be concerned about 43% approval rates. Are they better than Biden's last year going to the 24 election? Yeah, that's why Biden dropped out. Okay, one of the reasons. But no, they're going to have to focus on this, and there's no doubt concern about it.
Before I let you go, there was a big Supreme Court ruling today regarding the ability of ICE agents to just sweep in and detain people based on their appearance, where they work, where they happen to be standing, what language they're speaking. So I thought as we say goodbye, I'd ask you for your opinion on that as we wrap it up.
Yeah, that's a big deal, of course, because that was the contention down in Los Angeles, as you know, that there was so-called quote unquote profiling rather than having, hard evidence or a warrant, for example, an undocumented person that maybe had committed a crime or had alleged to. So the Supreme Court, as you rightly point out, has said, no, you can use, they don't use the word profiling, of course, but they, criteria to determine at least whether somebody gets questioned. And that's really what this is about, questioning their status. Now, I will simply end with this, Kim. This is a debate that's gone on for a long time in law enforcement in the United States, be it red states or blue states. Can you, for example, pull somebody over, or can you stop somebody on the street based on a certain kind of criteria? This is a debate that's been going on for a long time. And this is one more aspect of that obviously right now potentially opens the door for ICE in a way it wouldn't have had the Supreme Court struck that down.
Gary Dietrich, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure, my friend. Do a better job. Have fun today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Gary. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Gary Dietrich's report is sponsored by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're looking to relocate to or from Northern California and you need a highly respected real estate professional, Bill Campbell of Remax Gold, that is the person to call. You can call or text Bill at 530-448-7474. That's 530-448-7474. Bill Campbell of Remax Gold, sponsoring Gary's segment. Thank you, Bill.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.